So today we are going to discuss about the excitability of muscle fibers. So excitability of muscle fibers initiates muscle contraction. So therefore we will discuss the process of action potential. Muscle fibers are highly specialized electrically excitable cells. Like other cells in the body, electrically excitable cells are polarized, meaning the inside of most cell membranes is negatively charged compared with the outside. So this polarization creates an electrical charge difference across the cell membrane. So the electrical charge difference across the cell membrane of an unstimulated cell is called the resting membrane potential. So in the resting membrane potential, the inside of the cells are negatively charged and the outside of the cells is positively charged. Okay, so as you can see here, this is the cell membrane and this is the extracellular space, meaning the outside of the cell. So it is more positive here. And this is the intracellular space, which is the inside of the cell. And it has more negative charge. Okay. So as you can see here, we have channels. Okay. So channels, these are passageway in the cell membrane. So these are passageway of ions or any substances na hindi po freely nakakapag-diffuse sa ating phospholipids. So here we have two types of channels, the lit channels and the gated channels. So yung color red, these are the gated channels. So ang gated channels, they remain closed unless meron pong stimulus like the nerve impulse, okay, coming from the nervous system, the message from the nervous system. So, saka lang siya mag-o-open if merong nag-trigger sa kanya, okay, na stimulus. So, yan ang gated channels. So, saka lang siya pwedeng daanan ng mga substance papasok at palabas ng cell kapag siya ay na-trigger na ma-open. And then this one, the color blue channel, these are the leak channels. Ibig sabihin, they remain open. Naka-open lang sila. So, yung mga ions or yung mga substance ay malaya pong nakakapasok at labas sa ating cell. Okay? Because of the leak channels. So, what makes the resting membrane potential exists? Okay, bakit ganito? Bakit positive sa labas, negative sa loob ng cell? Una, the concentration of potassium is higher on the inside of the cell. Ibig sabihin, potassium is the most abundant cation inside the cell. So, potassium is found intracellularly. Second, the concentration of sodium is higher on the outside of the cell membrane, meaning sodium is the most abundant cation inside the cell. Okay? The third one is there are many proteins inside the cell. Ang mga proteins, they are negatively charged. So these negatively charged molecules do not exit the cell because they are too large to diffuse across the cell membrane. Okay, so making it more negative ang charges or ang charge in the inside environment. And then, the cell membrane is more permeable to potassium than it is to sodium. So electrically excitable cells have many potassium leak channels. Thus, because potassium is in higher concentration inside the cell, it diffuses out of the cell through the leak channels. So, meron tayong mga leak channels para sa potassium wherein si potassium, free lang po siyang nakakapag-diffuse or nakakapag-move palabas ng cell. So, since ang potassium ay positive charge, kapag may lumalabas through the leak channels, So, nagiging negative yung environment sa loob kasi nababawasan sila ng positively charged na potassium. So, very little sodium leaks into the cells because there are so few sodium leak channels. Unlike sa sodium na puro gated channels ang kanyang dinaraanan, kaya hindi po siya makapasok directly or makapasok ng basta-basta lang sa loob ng cell unless ma-open yung mga gated channels ng sodium. So now, let us discuss the process of muscle contraction. So to initiate a muscle contraction, the resting membrane potential must be changed. So this is the resting membrane potential. Okay. So changes in the resting membrane potential occurs when the gated cell membrane channels open. So in the skeletal muscle fiber, ang nagtitrigger lang sa pag-open ng mga channels is yung nerve impulse coming from the brain. I will repeat. Changes in the resting membrane potential occur if the gated cell membrane will open. In a skeletal muscle fiber, a nerve impulse triggers the gated sodium channels to open. So these are the steps in the action potential in initiating a muscle contraction. Number one. Number one is the resting membrane potential. So in the resting membrane potential here, the sodium channels are closed. Okay? But not all potassium channels are closed. Merong gated, merong leak channel. So therefore, dahil may leak channel, sodium diffuses down its concentration gradient through the open potassium channels, making the inside of the cell membrane negatively charged compared to the outside. So ganun nga, si potassium, dahil may leak channels, nakakalabas lang po siya. Okay? Nakakalabas lang siya sa cell freely. So, nababawasan yung positive charge sa loob ng cell, nagiging more negative sila kesa sa charge sa labas na positive. So, that is the resting membrane potential. So, kapag na po may nerve impulse or message coming from the brain na merong muscle contraction, okay? Meron nang nag-i-initiate ng muscle contraction. So, this is the time na mag-o-open na po yung mga sodium channels. So, sodium channels are now open. What will happen kapag open na ang sodium channels? The sodium will now diffuse down the concentration gradient through the open sodium channels, making the inside of the cell membrane positively charged compared to the outside. So, nag-open ng mga sodium channels, sodium goes in. Sodium goes in the cell. So, ang process po nito, class, is called depolarization. Depolarization. Ibig sabihin ng depolarization, there is an increase in positive charge inside the cell membrane. There is an increase in positive charge inside the cell membrane. Bakit naging mas positive na yung charge sa cell membrane? Which is kanina, sa resting membrane potential, negative ang charge ng cell membrane. So, naging positive ang charge ng cell membrane kasi maraming sodium ang nakapasok. Since sodium carries a positive charge, so pagpasok niya po inside the cell, magiging positively charged ang inside the cell compared sa outside na more negative na po. Kasi nabawasan na ng mga sodium cations. And then the third step will be the process of repolarization. So, sa repolarization, maglo-close na ang channel ng sodium. Close na ang channel ng sodium. So, mag stop na rin ang mga sodium ions sa pagpasok ng cell, sa loob ng cell. So, ang mangyayari, yung mga gated channels ng potassium naman ang mag-o-open. So, gated channels of potassium open, so potassium will move outside the cell membrane. Potassium moves outside the cell membrane. So, madadagdagan ang potassium na lalabas ng cell, lumabas ng cell, making the inside of the cell membrane negatively charged compared to the outside. once again. So, since madaming potassium ang lumabas, so magiging negative na naman po ang charge inside the cell and then magiging more positive ang charge outside the cell. So, that is the mechanism of initiating muscle contraction. So, kapag nag-stop na ang muscle contraction, halimbawa nag-stop na ang body movement, muscle movement, ang mangyayari babalik na sa dati, sa normal, which is yung resting membrane potential natin kanina, which is, again, si sodium channel mag-o-open para bumalik si sodium sa labas ng cell, si potassium channel mag-o-open para si potassium ay babalik sa loob ng cell. So, babalik na naman po sila sa dati nilang itsura na si potassium inside the cell, si sodium outside the cell. So, that is the mechanism of the action potential in the initiation of muscle contraction.